Only a year ago, Victorian Chief Health Officer Brett Sutton said of the COVID vaccine, quote, "Prioritise it like your life depends on it, because your life does very much depend on it," unquote. How much is very much? Well, not much at all, as it happens.
So, despite 2, 3, 4 doses of the vaccine, it's not so good at preventing infection in the first place. So we are getting infected. That's why we've had tens of thousands of cases in this wave.
The vaccines have proven to be so ineffective they can't even protect the CEO of Pfizer, Albert Bourla. On Monday, the company released a statement confirming he had caught the virus despite having been jabbed 4 times with his own company's product. The statement said he was, quote, "grateful to have received the jabs, but seemed reluctantly to state explicitly, as has been the custom lately, that the vaccine had directly reduced the severity of the infection." It said, quote, "We have come so far in the past 2 years in our efforts to battle this disease that I am confident that I will have a speedy recovery," unquote. This is a long way from the certainty and the guarantees with which we were sold the vaccines only as recently as a year ago. It is increasingly clear that the vaccines are ineffective, which means the companies and governments that forced people to take them did so for no reason. When I was coerced into it by my previous employer, I was told that if I didn't get jabbed and turned up for work, the government might shut the company down. Whether this was true or not was difficult to know, but the company went along with it anyway. The Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, said, quote, "No one is forced to do anything in this country. People will make their own decisions. If they are legally able to go and get a vaccine and someone is legally able to provide that vaccine and they can provide informed consent to that end, well, that is a matter between the pharmacist and that individual," unquote. It's also a matter with their employer and the police, as it happens, because people were getting sacked and locked up in their homes for not being vaccinated. It's also increasingly clear that these vaccines can cause serious adverse reactions, including myocarditis and pericarditis, which are long-term and seriously debilitating. Even the people who have so far luckily been spared any adverse reactions are still in the dark. As American biologist Brett Weinstein, one of the world's leading critics of mRNA vaccines, warned almost 2 years ago, the long-term consequences of these vaccines are unknown and they will surprise us. The role that Big Pharma played in this is easy to explain. It made billions of dollars from the enforced vaccination of healthy people. And government's role is also easy to understand. The steadily encroaching safetyism in nominally free Western democracies created a demand for governments that didn't simply manage state affairs, they protected the citizenry from whatever fears they imagined were threatening them. But it's the role of the media that is almost impossible to explain. For generations, the business model of the media has been to challenge the powerful on behalf of its viewers and readers. Businessmen, politicians, and any other powerful elites who sought undeserved power over the media's customers were brought to account. But recently, as new technology and media startups threatened the legacy media's hegemony, the old outlets, for some reason, became part of the elite themselves, not representing their audience, but talking down to them. This became blindingly obvious during the pandemic. It was no surprise that the leftist groups like the ABC and Channel 9 backed the fear campaign and the supposedly virtuous collective response of mass vaccination. Spreading paranoia and ordering people around is what leftist journalists do. But News Corp? The company that for decades has worn the vitriol of leftists as a badge of honour and a testament to its adherence to robust freedom of speech? I've been in journalism for 30 years, most of it proudly at News Corp. It's a company I've defended countless times as a stalwart of pluralism and independence. Defying the zeitgeist of pushing a pointless vaccine against the exaggerated threats of a mostly harmless virus would have, for most of the time I worked at the company, been a no-brainer. But mysteriously, news decided to run with the herd. It still published some contrarian opinions, mostly by people like Chris Kenny and Steve Waterson of The Australian, whose brilliant ability to mercilessly ridicule Australia's new generation of authoritarians attracted a cult-like following. But for the most part, news stuck to the narrative. The virus will kill you and only selfish people don't get vaccinated. I might be exaggerating only slightly. Some of those selfish people who worked for the company lost their jobs as a result. The consequence of this for adults should be bad enough, but when history comes to judge the greedy, the willfully ignorant and the powerful elites who imposed this ridiculous lockdown and these vaccines on us, it will be the jabbing of kids that attracts the most visceral disgust. Kids were never at risk from the virus. But in a piece titled, "Should my 5-year-old get the coronavirus vaccine?" the Sydney Morning Herald said, quote, "In a word, yes," unquote. The piece specifically recommended Pfizer. That was in December last year. 3 months later, the same newspaper was saying the effectiveness of Pfizer in the 5 to 11 age group was just 12%. Since the Centre for Disease Control in the United States said there was now no difference between vaccinated and unvaccinated, the true figure we now know is actually 0. I can't imagine how the parents who believed the media and dutifully jabbed their kids back then feel now. I wouldn't like to be the executive of a company or a minister of a government that coerced these vaccines on us when the class action lawsuits start being filed.